I really appreciate the opportunity to give you the experience of this protreptic leadership approach. I just want to give you a little framework about this approach before we dive into the
Okay.
conversation. So it's an approach that is originated from the Greek leadership academies. So back when Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates were walking around and training new leaders. So it was taught along with politics, justice, rhetoric, and poetics. And like with the rhetorical approach, they have three approaches, just like the rhetorical appeal. So you have the logos, ethos, and pathos. That's brought into a modern leadership challenge framework, but it's still basically the same three angles. And what I'm going to try with you today is just to stay with the logical approach to defining leadership, because the whole purpose of this type of conversation is to close the value gap and create team alignment through clarity about how we understand values and concepts that we are operating under in an organization. And then also to heighten or elevate our awareness about how we think about things and ultimately improve team performance. This type of conversation, we're going to start by really looking at a particular concept. And based on our conversation last time, we were talking about leadership and the definitions of leadership. So if you don't mind, I'd like the topic for this conversation to be leadership.
Okay.
And so my first question is, where does the need for leadership come from? Why do we need leadership?
That's a good question. Most people, I feel, are innately purpose driven, but some are more purpose driven than others, and I feel like some need, I think, how do I even put this into words? It's a hard question to answer. Why do we need leadership? I feel like innately there are some that just aren't sure how to move in a certain direction. And so in order to be able to do that, they need a certain type of, I don't know if it's a personality or if it's a another type of human with a certain type of style that can help them see kind of the direction or the way, clarity into the way that where they want to go, whether that is personally or professionally, or I mean, if we're just speaking professionally from a leadership perspective, like it depends on kind of where you're at in your career. If I'm like early in my career, I would look to a certain type of leadership to aspire to be somebody that might be maybe more experienced than I am in a certain area. And I'm not saying that they have to be a certain age, right? Because I don't think it has to be a certain age. It can be somebody that could be younger than me or older than me or the same age as me, but in a certain area that might have more experience than me that I can learn from. And so that I would see that as a type of leadership that would help bring clarity for me to help get me to where I might want to go.
So what I hear is what you're talking into is like a type of role model.
Yes, more of a role model, because I don't want to think of leadership as hierarchy. I don't like to think of leadership as hierarchy anymore. I used to. I don't even want to say the older I get, but the more that I am immersed in this role that I'm in from management excellence, and the more work I do with employees and what they want to get out of their career and what is meaningful to each person, regardless of what job role they have or tenure they have. Every person finds meaning differently, and a hierarchy is very kind of archaic. Like that's the way it used to work, where you would look to the higher ups for leadership. You would look to those that were higher levels than you or a higher pay grade than you. Those were the leaders that you looked to. And now I feel like leadership is more about those who might have more experience or maybe more knowledge from a more of a learning perspective than you, that you can learn from, versus just a hierarchy type situation. I feel like the hierarchy perspective is more defined by power. And I don't think that power should be, I don't know, I just think power tends to bring the negative aspect to what old school kind of leadership, how it was defined. And that sense of power can be abused, and how people want to lead or be led now isn't by power or by a know-it-all or by somebody who can abuse that kind of power with you from a hierarchical perspective. It's more about, how can I learn from you, or how can you show leadership in a different perspective, maybe more from a mentor or a coach, or a way that I can learn from you to make me better.
Yes, and along those lines, how do you see the purpose of leadership today?
You're focusing on how I see it in like my leadership philosophies and how I approach leadership. And when somebody says things like, this is what makes you a great leader, it's not about hierarchy, and it's not about me saying I'm your manager. It's about me treating you as a human being, and me seeing you as a whole human being. I see your purpose, I see your passions, I see from a professional as well as a personal perspective of how you want to grow and where you want to grow. And I'm in a maybe a role that I can help you get there. I see it as, I am here to remove roadblocks for you and empower you to be the best that you can be every day, versus you will do what I say from a, like from that old school kind of leadership perspective. I think that being a leader with empathy and kindness and care, that's the part I think that redefines leadership now versus how I think some people have seen it historically.
The word that comes to my mind is like almost midwife.
Yeah. It's to help. And if I'm bringing up like my leadership philosophies, and I have a personal philosophy of it's to make a mindful positive difference every single day. Like that's my personal philosophy. And then my leadership philosophies are, your human comes first, be authentic and self-aware and have empathy, have integrity and lead by example, work with passion and purpose, be transparent, like earning trust and ensure psychological safety, empower, be a catalyst for others' careers. Like all of those things to me mean leadership. Be a kind person in this world, and especially as a leader, a role model, have integrity.
What would you say is the opposite of leadership?
Well, I think having that kind of dictator mindset. The opposite of leadership is somebody who is in it for themselves and their own gain and their own notoriety, their own promotional velocity, their own brand, their own, like selfishly, my own ego, only for me. When you become a leader, it is no longer about yourself. It is about those that are on your team. And I don't even like to say those that report to you, because that even then starts to feel like that hierarchy, right? But that's kind of how the system works. It is about those that are now within your care from a career perspective, and all of the perspectives, because you spend the majority of your time at work, it seems, right? And so you want to make sure that everybody has a really positive experience when they come to work every day, and that they are empowered and cared for. But the opposite of that would be a lot of times what I see from managers who belittle, who don't respect, who don't model the values, who don't have integrity, almost hypocritical, where they might say, "Oh, I live all these things," or stand up on a stage and say, I am all of these things," but then when you go back to the office, they are none of those things. Lack of kindness and empathy and inclusion and all of those things, that's not leadership.
So what happens when leadership is gone? When leadership has left the
Um,
building?
when leadership has left the building, it's interesting. It tends to feel chaotic. It tends to feel like the boats, where there once was cohesion and vision and maybe purpose and connection, um, positivity, almost like clarity, energy, and excitement about whatever the purpose is or the vision is of what you're doing or working towards, is gone. And then almost like the tethers, like that one unit is now potentially maybe separate boats floating off. There's no connection, there's lack of clarity. Because of lack of clarity, stories tend to get made up in your head. There's no certainty for sure, like where you're going or how you're doing, or but if leadership isn't there, it's kind of an empty, I want to say, lost, at least from a professional perspective, for an organization, right? And like, say, a team, if the leader is gone and then you have these team members that are left, and the leadership is gone or the leadership is toxic, it can be a really kind of negative, empty place.
So I found it fascinating that you used the analogy of a boat and boats. So I was just reflecting on leadership. If you take the two parts of the word.
Oh, and ship. Yeah.
I was just wondering, really, with the origin of that, if we look at those two components of the word leadership, it's what's your thought on that?
Yeah, no, I had never thought of that before. Wow. Yeah, no, that isn't that interesting. No, I feel like that. Like together, like leadership, it feels like it is. It's like like this. And I can reflect on when I've had a really good leader. It felt amazing. Like I felt like I was part of something big, and it didn't even have to be completely like, there was ambiguity still, there was still sometimes lack of clarity of like, not everything was buttoned up and clear of like all of the details, right? There was still things that were being figured out. We were still sometimes building the plane while we were flying it, but the energy that was there and the excitement that was there and the knowing I was part of something big and that I was included, like every person felt included in that, and that we were brought together as a community and sometimes even as a family, and reminded and validated that you are an important piece of this and we can't do this without every one of you. That validation and that I see you and you are here and we are going to do amazing things, that constant reminder felt incredible. And I've only had that a handful of times. And when you don't have that, it's a feeling of almost, I want to say almost dark, like it's darkness. And you are just kind of guessing at what what is good. Like I'm just going kind of by my gut of what I think is going to be impactful. And I've had leaders that don't ever bring everybody together, that say things like, I don't believe in telling people when they're doing a good job. It's my style to only tell them what they need to improve on. And like, that's not what I think any human needs. People need a balance of both. Like, tell me what I'm doing well, because that energizes me enough to hear the other part of it, that I'm going to want to then improve on everything else. That doesn't make me weak. That doesn't make me feel like I need to be coddled. It gives me the validation that I need in order to drive to be even better than that. Boy, it's something when you feel like you are a part of something big, and that you don't have all the answers, but when you are made to feel like you are an important piece of the puzzle, boy, that feels good. And it's a good leader that can do that for you, even through the worst, hardest times. When a leader can do that for you.
It's interesting because I was thinking about how to present this type of conversation. And I went down to the harbor in Honolulu, and by accident or divine intervention, I don't know, there were two ships next to each other. One that was looking really good, sharp, ready to sail out. And then there was a sunken ship next to it.
Right? And this is exactly it. And those are the two analogies of what it is like with really good leadership and not. That's exactly the feeling. And what you felt of what would it feel like if I got on either one of those boats? That's what it feels like, of what you would feel like if you had great leadership and not. It's exactly what it feels like. I'm going to sink. My life's at risk here. You feel almost this dread and this pit in your stomach and this worry constantly when you have poor leadership. And it I don't know, weighs heavily on you personally, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And when you have great leadership, all that goes away, because you don't have to second guess yourself, I don't think, or your value or your worth, because you're just focused on, I get to do amazing work. I don't have to second guess any of the other things, or am I going to be thrown under the bus, or am I going to be retaliated against, or what landmines am I going to step on? I don't know. So I better be careful. I better protect myself. I don't know. You just get to do amazing work and know that this leader has your back and you're trusted and you're in a safe, psychologically safe place, that you have a voice and you're empowered to do incredible work and trusted. It's the most incredible feeling. So your boat thing, exactly. It's exactly what it feels like.
Right. Thank you. I think we're going to stop our conversation here.
Yeah, it's perfect, right?
I want to just ask you, how do you feel about this type of conversation?
It energizes me so much. Such a real topic, and so timely and so important, I think, right now in what's going on in the world. Both of those things come together, of doing the work that you love and being in an environment with an incredible leader. Oh my God, you can change the world. Like, you feel like you can change the world, versus feeling like you're constantly having to defend yourself and protect yourself. And every day feels like confusion and chaos. And like, it's really unfortunate what's hot and what's not for HR in 2023. It's all about empathetic leadership. What you're asking me is important and needed right now.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right.